How many lap dances did you get with that girl? Was it like lap dances?
She was a stripper, and I add that in there because it just makes it's like clickbait. It like makes the story really fucking cool. So, one thing I'll say, and I've learned that's really effective when I start these talks is I want to tell you where I'm at today and then backtrack it, because I feel like that gets people's attention. And, if you rewind 4 years ago, I was still in a prison cell. I was a month away from getting out and going to a halfway house. 3.5 years ago, I was just getting out of a halfway house. This year, my company's looking at doing roughly 40 to 45 million in sales.
Nice.
Next year, we will be.
Man, that's awesome.
Great for you.
And both of you are looking at me, and yes, I helped just today, so we'll talk about that later.
Yes, you did. You put us on. You're helping us stay on track. 40 to 45 million in sales this year. Next year, we will be, if everything, God forbid, nothing major happens, we will be $100 million a year company.
Wow, that's awesome.
In 4.5 years. So that's where I am today. Going back to what got me to this, I've got an interesting story like many people. But it's different. I actually grew up in a good home. We were well taken care of. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich. We went to private school up through 8th grade. I was adopted. I have a twin brother. My parents couldn't have kids, so they adopted both my twin brother and I together. They also adopted us a sister. Wanted the best for us, put us in private school. My brother and I talked my parents into transitioning us from private school to public school and high school so we could play sports. The problem with going to private school is you're very sheltered and you're very protected. I didn't understand what real life was like, so my first sign, I was an A+ student in private school. I excelled. Went to public school, and that's when I started, screwing up. I don't know if we can cuss on here. But
yeah, go ahead. All day.
Please do.
That's when I started fucking up.
It's encouraged.
I feel much more comfortable.
My vision of how public school went was what I saw on TV, because that's all I knew. So I thought it was cool to cut up in class. I thought it was cool to talk back to teachers, not do homework. Freshman year, I was not expelled, but suspended. Sophomore year, I came back and I showed what I could really do, and I was a saint with flying colors. Right. So starting on my junior year, I was popular, but I quickly fucked that up by getting suspended again. And then senior year, I decided I didn't want to deal with it, so we had our parents move us to another high school. So I spent my senior year at one high school where I didn't realize that word traveled from high school to high school. So I thought I was going to be able to run from my problems at one high school, and now they followed me right there. So then I hated all my senior year. I was ready to get out of high school. I finally got out. And then, again, still sheltered. Never went to a house party, never had a sleepover throughout high school, never drank, never saw a drug. I get out, I move out of my parents' house right after I turned 18, moved into this house. I lived with a stripper and her boyfriend and another guy, and it was on.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
look,
that's a definite game changer.
Right
there. Right.
She was cool. I won't say her name in case she's listening, but they were bad. That was my first introduction to. I remember my first drink. They were like, "We're gonna have a party. What do you drink?" And I was like, the usual stuff, trying to sound cool.
Man.
And I think I had like one and a half Grey Goose and Sprites, and I passed out on the floor. And I woke up the next morning and thought, "Holy shit, drinking is." Nothing that they taught me about in private school, because in private school they were, they taught you that the drugs are bad, the world is bad, alcohol's bad. If you touch these things, you're just gonna die right then. And it was the opposite. I had so much fun. So much fun. So I didn't believe anything that my parents told me. I didn't believe anything that authority told me growing up. I was just like, y'all had it wrong.
Right.
So
this is awesome.
I get out, I start start working. I started adult. College was never for me.
Right.
My parents, thank God, you know, they never, I say thank God, most people would be like, what are you talking about? But my parents never asked me about college. They never pushed me into filling out applications for college. It was just kind of like, I think one time they were like, hey, are you going to go to college? And I said, nah.
Yeah.
And they're just like, okay. But I also had this realization early on. I was like, it doesn't really sound appealing to get out and go to college and spend 4 years busting my ass to get out, get a mediocre job that I'm going to have to spend 10 more years at kissing someone's ass to maybe by that point, my mid to late 30s, I'll be making $100,000 a year because that's the goal.
So was at that point you kind of had, or have you always had the entrepreneurial mindset, or was that kind of the turning point that like you're getting older and you're realizing what the reality is and you're like, oh, that kind of sucks?
It wasn't the entrepreneurial. I just knew I wanted to be rich,
Right.
Or I wanted to make money,
Right.
So I hadn't really had that desire to go out on my own yet, but I definitely knew I was going to be able to work harder and make more money, just getting straight into the workforce than going to college.
Okay.
So that's what I did. I moved to Dallas and I became a personal trainer. I was bartending 4 or 5 nights a week on the popular at the popular bars. And then, like I said, this was my first introduction to like real adulthood life. No boundaries, no disciplines, no.
So you're living with a stripper and you're bartending at all these popular restaurants.
Yes.
Well,
Getting drunk every night.
there you go.
But in one sense, I felt like I was still responsible because I was a trainer 5 days a week at a gym, 8 hours a day,
Right.
and then I would go bartend 3 or 4 nights a week. So I was making really good money.
Okay.
Problem was I was never taught how to manage money, so I was spending more than I was making.
Gotcha.
So for this cycle, I'll like jump around a little bit, but for this cycle of 10 years, I was living above my means, paycheck to paycheck, but I was making really good money.
Okay.
Partying every night of the week, and it seemed like every career I went into, I went from personal training to bartending to real estate. I did a few little side things in between there, and it just seemed like I'd found this niche where the more I partied and the more I became known socially, the better I did. And it happened. I wanted to become a real estate agent, but I didn't know how to do it.
Right.
I went out to a club one night and I met this guy that happened to own his own brokerage firm, and he said, come work for me and my team. And my first day there, I told him about some friends of mine that had a property for sale, and it happened to be a $2.5 million property. They got the listing, and I got a check 2 months later for $40,000
Nice.
for a simple
Nice.
introduction. I was like,
Yeah.
holy
Wow.
shit,
Right.
just from partying.
Yeah, like that's all you got. What's next? Like,
I know. Well, there's more. I mean, there's more than that. But
How many lap dances did you get with that girl? Was it like lap dances?
she was a stripper, and I had that in there because it just makes it's like clickbait. It like makes the story really
Right.
fucking cool. But outside of knowing that she was like, outside of her actually telling me I stripped for a living, you wouldn't believe it.
Right.
Wholesome
Really?
girl,
That's good.
beautiful, down to earth. Boyfriend was cool as shit.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
she was
why wouldn't she be?
she was the one cool stripper that actually was, stripping to pay for college or something.
Right.
But
Time into the
Heart of
rough.
gold, right? Yeah,
also
right.
strong work ethic.
strong work ethic.